Hey, this is Meredith Elliott Powell, and it is time for Thrive, turning uncertainty into competitive advantage. The show where we dive into the strategies, everything that you need to know to start to control all this change and uncertainty in the marketplace. I want you to hang with me because we got a great guest today in Tiffani Bova, and we're going to pick her brain, really learn everything that she knows about the cutting edge with sales and growth today. Tiffani, I got to tell you, I'm so excited to have this chance to talk with you. You know, for those few people who don't know you, have not seen you on LinkedIn, and I can't imagine who the one or two are out there because you seem to be everywhere these days. You know, I love your title of Global Growth and Innovation Evangelist. Tell us how you got that title and what exactly that means.
So it's so interesting. It more often than not, it's not like, hey, what's really keeping you up at night? What are you thinking about? Like, what does your title mean? is the question. I spent a decade at Gartner as a research fellow covering growth, sales transformation, innovative go-to-market models. And Salesforce asked me to do pretty much what I was doing there, but do it for us and for our clients and really evangelize a lot of the changes that are happening in market and kind of share best practices. So I'm almost 100% externally focused. I have no internal responsibility. I don't have a team. I am just an individual contributor out there trying to help companies be successful in these new dynamics.
Talk about new dynamics. I mean, if we thought we were going through uncertainty with COVID, look at the marketplace today and how much business growth and sales is changing. What is your take on it? And what are you advising businesses and organizations today? And then I'm curious as to what you're studying.
A number of years back, I had the pleasure and honor of having a conversation backstage with Clayton Christensen. This was many, many years ago because he has since passed away. But we were having a conversation about jobs to be done. And when I really heard him explain it to me, not reading it in the pages, I'm a listen visual learner, not a read learner. So when he explained it to me, and I was like, about 1,000 light bulbs went off simultaneously. That the jobs that we want to do remain constant over time. It's the solutions that change. And technology is the example of how the solution has changed. So for example, I used to, trade and commerce. I would trade vegetables for meat. 200 years ago, I would send smoke signals to invite someone to my house for dinner. But now I can, send it on an app on my phone, and I can send a text message to invite somebody for dinner. So when you think about selling, the job to be done hasn't changed, right? I'm trying to get you to want a product or service I have, and whatever the monetary trade for that is might have been bartering back in the day. And today it might be Bitcoin. But ultimately that commerce and what you're trying to accomplish has remained fairly constant. So it's our job as leaders to figure out how and where is that solution going to change, not only today, but 3 or 5 years from now. Because you could argue that, look, I've been selling tech and in tech now for almost 30 years. And it was call 100 people, 10 will call you back, 3 will set a meeting, and 1 will close. Well, then it was, I'll send 100 emails, and then 10 will respond, 3 will make a meeting, and 1 will close. And now it's, well, hold on a second. Do I need to do the 100, or can I get more predictive and personalized and only contact the 10 that are more likely to do something? The reach out is still the goal, right? The job to be done. How, where, and when, and why we do it, that's what's changed. So I'd say that what's old is new again, leveraging technology in different and new ways.
One of the things that I find most fascinating when I talk with clients today is in today's marketplace, finding business doesn't seem to be the challenge. The challenge is really coming down to can we deliver what we sell with, supply chain issues? And then do we have enough talent on the team? I mean, can we add salespeople? Can we grow the salespeople we've got? Can we retain the salespeople we've got? Where do you see sales changing in relationship to those challenges in the marketplace?
Yeah, it's a great question, because I remember many years ago when I was still at Gartner, another analyst firm had made the prediction that AI was going to wipe out like 1 million sales jobs. And I didn't believe it then, and I don't believe it now. Some research that we've done on the future of sales actually shows that high-performing teams that use AI in a more effective way are actually hiring more salespeople. So to me, it's human and tech, not human alone, not tech alone. The power couple is the two together. So now the challenge becomes what happens to sellers who are not so comfortable using technology, number one, or they do have the view that it's going to replace them. How do you get them to embrace technology as a partner to them? Because I believe that the sellers that will win tomorrow are going to be the ones that use technology better than their competitors, right? Better from a personalization standpoint, a next best action standpoint, et cetera. So as a salesperson, I'd say, and as a sales leader, manager, more importantly, we have to make sure that we are spending time in coaching and preparing our people for what is actually coming at them today. I'm going to give you a couple stats. If 66% of a seller's time is spent on non-selling activities, after 20 years of advancement in technology, I'm not sure where we've gone wrong. But simultaneously, only 54% of sellers globally will hit quota. So the assumption is maybe, right, if we can reduce the amount of time spent on non-selling, you're going to get a lift in quota attainment. One is the Salesforce quote. One is the CSO Insights quote. This next one is a Bain stat that really, when you look at coaching on a selling perspective, it tends to be coaching that is around administrative tasks. And not around tasks about how do I improve what I'm doing, how I'm doing it, how do I not just overcome objections and how do I open and close a deal, or what 92 stages do I need to go through in order to, get a quote out the door, but more personal development. The research that Bain did showed that 47% of sellers would not spend $1 for 1 hour of their manager's time.
Wow.
So when you start asking these questions about a talent crisis and we can't get people in the door and we are not making the investments necessary in our talent to prepare them for what they need. So then what happens is I'm frustrated. I don't feel like I'm supported. I don't have what I need. I'm not empowered to do what I need to do for the customer. Instead, I have these productivity metrics hanging over my head, so much so that it might even be, what are my keystrokes? Like,
right.
That sends the wrong message. So I think it's a combination of technology, skill development around that technology, but also the human soft side of how we now have to transition the way we sell because of what has happened over the last 2 years, right? We are not just face-to-face. We are not just digital. We are both. And so that sort of introduces challenges that are different than what we've seen in the past.
You know what I love about what you're saying, and I hope the audience is listening, because you're really giving them the path forward and the opportunity. It's that if you embrace the technology, if you coach and develop your people. But, you and I both know from being in sales for a long time, and if COVID taught us nothing else, it taught us just how far behind with technology salespeople were. I mean, how many other industries were already selling virtually and so many salespeople were not? And sales is legendary for putting a really good salesperson into a leadership position, but it's the one person that doesn't want to develop people at all. Would you not agree?
I would agree. And that goes back to that stat. Just because you're a high power seller does not mean you're going to be a really effective, motivating, and inspiring leader. As a matter of fact, you could actually work the opposite, because high performing sellers, have very specific personality types. And that's not always the most collaborative, empathetic, kind of direction. But what I'll say is this is some work that Mike Bosworth did. If you know who Mike is, he created sort of coin solution selling many, many years ago after his work at Xerox. And he created a triangle that was like 14 to 17% of sellers are A performers. Like, they were born to sell. This is, are they trained or are they born with it?
Right.
That's for another day. But let's just say, right, it's kind of Tiger Woods is supposed to have a golf club in his hand.
Yeah.
I could take golf lessons every day, 8 hours a day, 7 days a week. I might get good, but I'm not going to make it to tour.
Right.
Okay. So, he was born to be on tour, A seller. A B seller is the workhorse. That's me, sort of taking the 8 hours a day, becoming a better golfer.
Yeah.
I might take your money. I'm a scratch golfer if you know anything about it, but I'm not going to make it to tour. And then you've got, and that's about 65%. The remaining are C's. Now, this is not you are moving up. That is just sort of the makeup of kind of the personality and effort and experience type of people that are selling. What that says, though, is don't try to recreate everybody into a Tiger Woods.
Yeah.
Right. And so how do you move the middle performers, the 65%? That is where consistency, processes, tools, learning, AI, machine learning, that's where it really works, because they're looking to get better using whatever advantage they have. It's much harder to get an A performer to go, okay, here's the technology, here's the process. They're like, yeah, I can do this without that. Now, this is not about hitting quota. Quota can be hit in any of those categories. It is really about that openness and willingness, what they come innately with. And I think that that's a great framework for you to realize that too often leaders from A try to recreate A's, and that doesn't work.
Yeah.
Too often marketers will test new campaigns in only A's, and it's going to give them a false positive or a false negative, right? Because they didn't do it, so it didn't work, or they did it their own way and just said they did it that way and it worked. You're getting the false positive, right? To really test in those the B performers, if you will, right? Or that B category. And third is really these questions you're asking. The skill development and the openness to try new technology is also very different. So this is not a one size fits all. And that's why coaching is so important. Understanding people on your team, how they learn, how they view technology, what they are insecure about in some cases. I'm worried about losing my job. I'm not so comfortable using tech, or the processes make no sense. How do you actually get the bottom, right? The people to actually feed back up to get those things to change. So that was a long answer to a very short question, but without the context of that categorization, it sounds too basic for me to try to explain.
Yeah, the thing too with you're saying is, I think that people need to think about is that your A players always have a choice. I mean, they're born to sell. So, they may stay with you, they may not stay with you. But when you invest in that middle group, they may never be A's, but they're going to be really good at what they do. And
they'll hit quota.
Exactly. They'll hit quota and they will be loyal. Speaking of quota, what do you think the biggest contributor is to sales professionals not hitting quota?
Well, let's go back to what we were just talking about. Mm-hmm. How motivating or demotivating is it for people who are not hitting quota to show up every day? In my previous life, when I did some research around this move the middle concept, it was really about gamifying learning around how to expand your horizon on the usage of technology and or collaboration, let's say across team. When you gamify, you now give those that maybe don't hit quota, don't make it to club, don't get their name on the entry door of the call center, or they don't get a shout out on the team Zoom call. You give those middle performers an opportunity to be the ones that get called out. It starts to lift the morale of those that feel like, I'm never going to make it to club. I'm never going to get a shout out. I'm not going to ever get a promotion. Like, it's just demoralizing. Look, if 54% of sellers are not hitting quota, 50% of your sales team is demoralized. Now, you either have a quota setting problem. It's too high, it's too low. I have to put that aside, right? If I'm making the assumption the quota is correct and you still have 50% missing, you're never going to get to 100. But boy, you've got room for improvement. Sort of best in class is in the 70s. So if you could move the middle, how does that look like? And I think that people want to feel seen and heard as humans, but as salespeople, it just doesn't want to be, you're always in the bottom half of the sales group, versus trying to gamify things they can win at. Mm-hmm. They got certified, right? They took a Salesforce trailhead. They got a certification. They, closed a big deal that was unexpected. They, saved a customer. Like, really reward and celebrate those kinds of behaviors that are not only quota based. And you start to get a rebalance in, it's not just the A players that get all the glory. The whole team plays a part in the success of the organization.
How do you feel like in today's marketplace, and do you feel that the sales process has changed or is shifting?
So I love this conversation, because the sales process to me is lots has changed on the customer side. Lots has changed technically. And yet we still are on this very laborious process. It's like 20-something% of salespeople feel like they lose deals because of the process problems. Now
Yeah.
they could be blaming it because they lost the deal, but let's, kind of put that aside. And then 77% of customers feel like the process has gotten actually more complicated for them. But I will tell you two things. I know a couple things for sure. Two of them are: one, salespeople do not wake up every day and go, I cannot wait to data enter.
Yeah, that's true.
That would be one.
That would be fact.
Fact. Okay.
Yes.
The second thing I know for sure, we'll see if you think this is fact as well, is as a customer, I don't wake up every day and go, oh, I'm so excited. Today is the day I go from stage 2 to stage 3 in the sales process.
Fact.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
So we have to figure out what are the processes that customers want today, balance that with what you're trying to do to manage the business, because the sales process is all about internal management.
Right.
It has very little to do with what the customer wants to do with you, needs to do with you. Customer reaches out, they're already 60 something % through their buyer journey, according to CEB. And so you go, well, do I start them at the beginning of my sales process, or do I start them in stage 3 of my sales process? Well, if the management and metric forces me to start at number 1, what have I just done? I've taken the customer and gone, I don't care. You're already this far down the journey. I have to start you here because
Right.
That's the process. And so, look, we can't do everything that a customer wants, nor can we do everything that a salesperson wants. But if you are not consistently reassessing your sales processes over time as things change, meaning you have change management in place, you're testing things, you're looking for ways to streamline those while still giving yourself visibility into the business, right? Pipeline forecast. Then do you need 9 steps?
Right.
Or is 9 steps really about proving that marketing is, carrying their weight on driving leads? And then 3 steps are about the salesperson actually doing something. And then the next 2 steps are about, making sure that we have post sales in place. And then the next 2 steps are about collecting the money and making sure the contract is, all that is very internal. So if you can use a design thinking mind and come at it from the customer perspective and come at it from the salesperson's perspective and look for fat on the bone, you can improve that process to streamline the things that may help them reduce 66% of their time spent on non-selling and help them increase the 54% that are hitting quota. So it's not one for one. It's not everything is going to give you revenue impact, but it sure will give you morale impact, and a people impact. So I think you have to be committed to doing that. And for an A performer that has moved into leadership who isn't very process strong, that's not a good connection, right? So you'd have to make sure that if you put an A performer in that place and that isn't their strength, you support them with sales ops so they have a partner in this to drive change through the organization.
Yeah, I'm constantly amazed at how difficult some businesses will make it to do business with you.
Yeah, I want to give you money. I want to give you money. I'm trying to give you money.
Right.
Trying to give you money.
And then they lose sight of the fact that I control the buying process, right? Like I could go buy from somebody else. The moment you throw an obstacle in front of me, you've given me reason to move on to your competitor.
I would say, this research started long before I came to Salesforce, but I was part of the team at Gartner that made the prediction that the CMO would spend more than the CIO on technology. And everyone sort of looked at us and was like, absolutely not going to happen. But what ended up happening was SAP, Oracle, Salesforce, Microsoft all went out and bought into the MarTech stack to get their hands and their portfolio on this new marketing spend. A lot of that was not about SEO optimization. That was really about improving the experience the customer had with the brand, either online, at events, offline, and enabling and empowering how this experience was making its way into the decision nomenclature, right? Right. Okay. So if you say that's the case, now kind of fast forward almost 10 years since we made that prediction, it's almost 12 now, it would be that we see 88% of a customer's decision sort of process is based on the experience they have versus the product or service they're buying.
Wow.
And so an example may be, how many of you have caught Uber, in the last 2 weeks or 3 weeks? People usually raise their hand if I'm in front of people in an audience. And then I'll say, how many of you remember what price you paid? Not many hands stay up. Then if I ask, How many of you remember if the music was loud, the driver was too talkative, the car was smelly, or they were driving aggressively? You're like, oh, I remember that, right? Or you went to a really great restaurant with spectacular food and the service was terrible. Would you go back?
Yeah,
If the food was good and the service was excellent, would you go back? And
absolutely.
so we make those decisions every day. And the challenge is we're actually pulling decisions about experience from other industries into the industry we're now in. So my Uber experience is now, I expect it from my healthcare provider.
Right.
My grocery store experience, I now expect at my clothing outlet, and so we're not just staying in the lane of industry. We're taking those experiences, and now the expectation is such that when companies don't make those investments on the experience lever, it basically says to them, I don't care enough about you to make those tech investments. So over the last 2 years, it was this acceleration of investments that have been put off to digitize the business, a lot of which was in this, experience on the digital side, on the human side, on making, virtual far more powerful and effective. And that was all forced upon us, but it was things that were put off for way
Yeah.
too long, right? So I think if you can start looking at those steps in the sales process and the buyer journey, like you just mentioned, Meridith, right, that ultimately always look at it with a lens of experience.
You know what I love about this is that we, so often salespeople tend to think about price as where the opportunity is, but the opportunity in the marketplace is where that experience is what people pay for. I was just talking with my sister about this morning because I'm so frustrated that I can make appointments to take my dog to doggy socialization easier than I can make appointments for myself to go get healthcare checkups.
Yes,
I mean,
exactly.
it's unbelievable to me that I can do everything through technology for my 4 little legged pup, but I still have to go back to the telephone.
Correct.
Because healthcare has not made that. And if one doctor would do this, we would all gravitate over there. I mean, that's where the opportunity is because I want that level of service.
Yeah, highly regulated industry like healthcare and financial services gets a little tricky, but I
Yeah.
completely agree with your
Yeah.
point. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. It's hard to believe we're coming to the end of time and the end of the show here. It's gone so fast. It's been so interesting. I've got to have you back. 2 questions I always like to close with. You can answer them either way. How do people get a hold of you? How do they follow you? Because you really do. If you are not following Tiffani Bova, you need to follow her because it is the most updated information on growth and sales. And then the other is, what is your best piece of advice for business owners, sales professionals today, if they want to learn to think and feel and act differently around uncertainty, not fear it, but embrace it?
So the first one would be follow me on LinkedIn. I'm fairly active, or Twitter or Instagram, whichever your sort of, or Facebook, whichever your favorite platform is. I'm really active on LinkedIn and Twitter. So that's probably the best. I've got a podcast called What's Next with Tiffani Bova, which that's, a great podcast as well. I've got a book called Growth IQ, which still today is doing really, really well. It's translated in 9 languages. So she has made her way around the world. So that's probably the best way to keep in touch with me. On the second question, I would say that we have to get comfortable with being uncomfortable, and expanding the people you have conversations with also helps you to get different points of view so that you can start to figure out, where are my blind spots? I'd tell you, the podcast has been a great place for me personally to get different points of view about
Yeah.
kind of similar topics. I'm sure it's the same for you. And so this is all about you learning and adjusting. This is not about you have to completely change everything about yourself. So trust the process, make small little pivots every day, ask people outside of your normal network what they like in their sales process, what stands out to them, customers you've lost in the past, one of your favorite customers, reach back out. What did they like? Try to figure out what is working in your own repertoire, what is not working. And it's not that I want you to fix what isn't working. It's that I want you to double down on what is working. And then either, have people on your team make up the rest of it, or get better at it, but know that that's not your quote unquote superpower. Sort of strengths and non-strengths, right? This is just, what are your strengths? Double down there. What are your non-strengths? Figure out how do you manage around that. And if it is that you're not very strong using technology, you have to get comfortable doing it. You just have to. Or, maybe sales not in every case, but let's say 80% of the time, if you're not going to use technology, maybe sales is just no longer right for you. Right. And so ultimately, I'd say that investing in your own personal development is the best investment you can make. Because if you don't invest in yourself, why would anybody else invest in you?
Such good advice. Get comfortable with the uncomfortable. I don't know where you go these days if you don't embrace technology, but the very first time I did a LinkedIn Live a couple of years ago, I was on air completely it was black for 2 minutes. And everybody said, weren't you embarrassed? And I said, no, this is how I'm going to learn. I mean, or the chances are that I was going to jump on here and do it right the first time. I mean, I think we have to be okay, especially with technology, of falling on our face a little bit in order to get it right.
Absolutely. Yeah. And look, that's all about psychological safety. I just did a great podcast interview with Amy Edmondson on that topic of psychological safety. And I did a really great post on LinkedIn a few weeks back about it as well. And that requires, your leaders and teammates to have empathy for trying something and it's going to fail. As long as you're not a surgeon or it's illegal, go for it. What's the worst that can happen? Right. Like, I don't want a surgeon trying on me and I don't want you doing something that's illegal. But outside of that,
outside of that, we're good.
You got it. You got it.
Well, thank you once again. This has been amazing. Just such a robust conversation. I can't wait to do the show notes for this. You have provided such good information. I really want to encourage the audience to go to What's Next with Tiffani Bova. It's a great podcast, chock full of fabulous interviews and really great information. And check out the Wall Street Journal bestseller that still sits out there today. I did not realize it was 9 languages. Congratulations, Growth IQ. But anyway, again, thank you so much for your time today. It's been fabulous talking with you.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.